You sure?
Yep.
Good morning. I'd like to call the Finance and Personnel Committee for Tuesday, October 16th, 2018 to order, please. Roll call.
Mark Williams.
Here.
Chris Zerble.
Here.
John Duska.
Present.
Mike Milczewski.
Here.
Tom Selleck is excused.
Please stand for the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I have none.
If not, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 5, action on the minutes from Finance and Personnel Committee, regular meeting September 18th.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second.
Second.
You can choose. Any discussion on this? All's in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, comments from the public. Nobody here this morning, so we'll just keep moving on to action items. 7A, Green Bay Water Billing Services. Greg? Good morning.
Good morning. So this agenda item, what we're looking to do ultimately, in short, is to take a portion of what we do in the billing process for our water, sewer, utility, and transfer the services over to Green Bay. There's a couple reasons why we're looking to do that. One is the Green Bay water utility, it's not the city, it's the water utility itself, handles the billing and collection operations for all the other municipalities that they service except for us. So they have the ability to do it. It's a very consistent process. In fact, what we do today is mirrored of what they do. So we were trained by Green Bay. We use the same systems that Green Bay uses, et cetera, on a day-to-day basis. If there's questions, concerns, updates with software, we're trained by the staff over at Green Bay. So it's a fairly seamless transfer, if you will, in that regard. The services that we would push over are outlined in the sheet that was attached. Basically, think of the water bills go out, and then the collection process of the actual dollars is what Green Bay would handle. So they take in the payments, they process the payments, whether that's through mail, through online, that really wouldn't change too much, or people calling in their payments, sending them in. The village would retain the service aspect, if you will, reading the meters. People have questions. Hey, why is my water bill? If it's really high, there's, maybe that's a question in dollars and cents, but if it comes down to, something's happening with my water, I don't know why my toilet's running, whatever that is, those are things that we would still retain. Our staff, our water utility workers would still maintain the tasks that they do. So it's listed out on here. So the things we would retain are the meter readings, the utility crew with customer visits, service needs, approving adjustments for leaks and credits. So if someone says, hey, I think I have a leak here, this bill's too high, we would go out, our staff would go out and confirm or deny that, and then contact Green Bay to make the proper adjustments to the billing. We would still take on customer calls for service, and then there's some other items such as maintaining meter records and other things that we would do as well. So it's a good fit, it makes a lot of sense, and what really prompted this is the second reason. Our existing clerk is going to retire. And so it's an opportunity for us as a village to look at, like any other position, look at it, what are the pros, the cons, what are things can we do to improve it, and it just makes sense from this regard. The employee is retiring at the beginning of the year, so it would be a transfer of those duties over there. We would then be able to take that extra time, which we think is about 50% of that role, and do a lot of other work within the building, whether that be assistance with the clerk's office, reshuffling duties with other employees potentially to help the legal department, and then also help finance and building inspection. So there's a lot of moving parts within there, but as a whole, it's to help provide a lot more efficiencies internally. So we just think from those two aspects, it's a good time to look at this, to make the adjustment. The water utility, when they looked at what they were doing, they feel that they can take it on. They've got other, City of De Pere, Wrightstown are some of their newer ones, and with their existing staff, they're looking at it would be $10,000 per quarter to the village, to the utility actually, to charge the services. The billing would go through the utilities. It would not be the general fund dollars to the village. So $10,000 a quarter, which would cover basically additional staff that they needed and benefits, et cetera. The only alteration to the process, if you will, really to our consumers, other than if they came to the building to pay their water bills, which we don't get a lot of. We get a lot of people that stop in and just drop it off, but they don't necessarily stay, is what the Green Bay Water Utility asked us if we could stagger our billing process. So right now, all of our water customers are billed quarterly, 4 times a year, on certain dates: January, April, I can't do the math, December, September, those months, those quarterly months. They would like to stagger that. They'd like to take our customer base and split it into thirds, still bill quarterly, but bill 1/3 of them on a schedule of January, April, July, October, another third bill February, May, August, November, and the last third group bill March, June, September, December. The reason for that is it helps avoid the big spike in activity in 1 month and then 2 months of, not as much. So they'd have a nice even flow of activity, and they're looking to do that with a lot of their other, the other customers as well, so that from their staff it's much more efficient for them, and their staff has a more consistent workflow. So what we would address that through some communication to our customers that, we haven't determined who or how we break out those thirds, but we would just do that. So from a customer perspective, you're still billed quarterly, and just for 1 month, there would be for 2/3 of the people, they'd have a disruption, because 1/3 would stay on the existing schedule they're on, and the other 2 would get a bill for probably 1 month of activity, and then the next time it would catch up. So we would obviously communicate that all out, explain how that would work on paper, but it's not going to be they're not going to get a bill for 6 months of activity. They're going to get a bill for either 3, 2, or 1 months the first time, and then back to being their normal quarterly bill. So all in all, we think this is a move that makes a lot of sense. Again, from a processing standpoint, it creates a much more efficient process with billing overall. It eliminates a lot of phone calls to our area. We get a lot of calls, a lot of billing questions that Green Bay would ultimately be responsible for handling those. And again, we would communicate all this out. But from a service perspective, the Village of Ashwaubenon customers would still contact us with those types of concerns. They think they have a leak, they think something like that. Our staff would maintain their role. This doesn't affect our water guys, Dave and all that crew. They still would maintain their work as normal. Nothing would change for them. This is strictly from the billing and collection side of things.
So you're actually adding staff is what you're basically doing here, because you're not eliminating a position, but you're adding staff someplace else in the building.
Actually, we would be, through this process, because of the retirement, there would be a domino effect, and in the end, we're shipping out a portion of services, and then we have a part-time position that we would probably eliminate, but all the people would be accounted for. They would be in new positions and have expressed interest in different positions that would be open as a result of it.
But you are adding staff.
No, we're eliminating a different part-time position in a different area. So Amy Lukey currently is full-time, does that position. She's going to retire.
Right.
So someone else is going to move from one full-time position into that position, but they will have to take some work from what they're currently doing over there in order to make that a full-time position, because there's a reduction in duties in that position over in the water utility. And then there's another position that's currently part-time, and they are going to take the full-time position of the person who's moving over, if you will.
So you're saying the head count is going down one person?
Half.
A half.
So are we offsetting this $40,000? How much is being offset by eliminating half a position?
Essentially, the whole thing is
Yeah.
neutral,
It's pretty.
because we have an increase in expenses on the water utility side in terms of they have to pay the bill. But they'll also we'll have some learning curve next year in terms of a new person has to learn some of the other duties there. But then there's a good portion of that that's still covered by the stormwater utility and the sewer utility. So it's a little bit of a shifting of funds, but at the end of the day, it's really neutral.
I think it'd be pretty close, because if you figure the half-time is at 27,000 in wage, and then another third for benefits, you're probably very close to the 40. I think,
Right.
I think that's the way it would work.
Okay,
Correct.
So it probably is a wash.
okay. Now, our residents are still able to, the people that drop off, they still come to the village here to drop off, make a payment, or they have to go
Well,
and?
they can, and what we will do is, we have at least weekly, if not bi-weekly, and sometimes more, we have staff that goes to the utility for different reasons. There's a really good working relationship between our water department and the Green Bay Water Utility, so there's a constant flow. We would just figure out a way to bring those over there. We will have to address if someone shows up at 3:30 on the day it's due. Not quite sure how we will communicate on the bills themselves through communication that, hey, the bill needs to go there. We just don't, you're going to be dealing with a handful potentially, but we'll address that. Maybe the first quarter we'll be willing to do that, but over time, hey, you got to get these bills. As they come in, we'll tell them, hey, you've got to next time go, we'll do it this time, but next quarter you've got to get that over to the Green Bay Utility.
Okay.
And that we'll work through it the first 6 months to help people with the transition. But at some point, just no different than taxes. We had the same issue with taxes. We used to collect taxes here, and then we didn't. And people had to go to the county. It was the same process. And within, well, in this case, it's annual. By the second year, we really had no problems. People, oh, okay, they were there the next year, and it was not a big deal.
There'll also be a push to do more Autopay by Green Bay. That we haven't done an awesome job of encouraging people to do that. It's a lot easier and faster and whatever. So there'll be a push to do that, just to ease that portion of it. The biggest glitch really is going to be the fact that we won't actually process the payment to enter it into the system. So that's why it's better for people to bring it there, particularly if they're bringing it that day it's due. They could potentially see a late fee because they're bringing it to the wrong place, if you will. But we're going to work through that, particularly in the beginning transition. There's going to be some confusion, and we just need to work through that till people are retrained.
So as a consumer, and again, because this bill only comes quarterly, I'm trying to think. Right now, I get a notification from, I think, the Ashwaubenon Water Utility. So will I be seeing a Green Bay letterhead coming to me with my bill?
Well, we've got one more bill to go out. So obviously for this, we've talked about potentially doing even just a separate billing, because we recognize that some people get their water bill and probably don't necessarily look at the attachments because, oh, it's just my water bill. Yeah. It's probably, so maybe if they got a different communication, it was separate.
He means the actual bill.
The
in the
actual
future,
bill
your
itself,
next
yes.
actual bill will say your one
Yes.
in 2019 will be from Green Bay Water Utility.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm thinking is that now, particularly the first time I get this billing from Green Bay, the question is, why am I getting something from Green Bay? I live in Ashwaubenon. And frankly, I might even just toss the dang thing without opening, because I get so much junk mail anyway. But so I think you're gonna have to do some education along that line, saying, hey, here's a shift.
But we have to do that educational piece to at least 2/3 anyway, to let them know and what Greg was starting to talk about was doing a direct mailing to homeowners. So, because if we stuff it in their water bill, they won't
No.
read it. Because so many people are on auto pay, they do throw it out no matter what. So all of your auto pay and all that stuff will transfer, but what we really need to communicate is this change in terms of when you're gonna get your next bill. So we will do a separate mailing from the village of Ashwaubenon saying, we're switching to this, you're gonna get a bill in December, but you're gonna get another bill in January, and another third are gonna get a bill saying, you got a bill in December, you're gonna get another bill in February from Green Bay Water Utility.
Have we ruled out that we couldn't still have our, the same? Right. Yeah.
You know, you say that, you know, there's a lot of people that throw these things away, but there's still a lot of people that do read them. They don't use the internet, they don't do things, you know, we got an older community here and everything. And in past, we've always had an opportunity to send information out with these water bills, and now we're not gonna have that.
Well, and that was well, for December, for sure, we would send something out. It doesn't mean we still can't do future communications in some capacity. We can do stuffers. I mean, there's different,
So
you're right. There's other ways to,
We can do a stuffer with our water bill like we do now.
we probably could. I don't know why we couldn't. We would just have to get that to them and ask them to do that, yeah. I mean, we'll have to communicate that and ask those questions. If we can't, then we would just do a mailer like we
I
do
mean, it's
today.
everything from leaf pickup to whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different garbage pickup things, I mean, that we always utilized it for too. So, I mean, I just want to make sure we're doing, you know, we're not getting our bang for our buck by doing it.
Right.
Well, one thing that's going to happen, though, is under their billing system, any stuffer that you want to put in is going to be protracted over a longer period of time. Whereas now, if it's a stuffer, it goes in this quarterly billing, everybody in the village gets it. Whereas under this system, a third.
I understand the third for their purposes on
No,
hiring
I
somebody.
understand,
That's, I mean,
but
that's.
for your communication
right,
purpose, it doesn't work as well.
Do we have any other mechanisms to get information out to people besides, you know?
Well, we
besides-
already do the brochure twice a year. I mean, we can do other things. You know, we were just discussing, the vast majority of people are really using credit cards or, we don't really know that people are reading that information, I guess. And the amount of times we stuff things in it, Doug does some that are required statutory notices, but we don't really use it that many times a year, maybe twice.
Yeah, I would say once or twice. Usually, one of them is the concerts in the park, and one of them is Doug's mandatory report on the water quality, et cetera, which would still go out
We did
at
the
that potential time.
PAC this year.
And then
but
this year we did
otherwise-
PAC. Otherwise, we don't do a lot because sometimes people want things, but they're too thick and it'll really add
Postage.
to postage, so it's not a more effective manner. But you're right. I mean, there have been times maybe it's once a year with something outside of those items that we've
I
listed.
mean, I understand, I see the value in some of what, you know, what we're going over here, but I'm just trying to be devil's advocate, if you will, to throw up other things that we use that billing for besides the,
Well, we would still have access to those billing name, that list, if you will, and if we had to do something, we felt that was the best mechanism for communication, we could certainly do it. There's no reason why we couldn't. We would just.
Yeah, but it's going
But
to be
you're right. It'd be now
prolonged.
it's spread out. You
Yeah.
don't have the one
So, I
time.
mean, it's not going to,
But we could still get that list and do a one-time mailer, just not with the water bills, if you will. We would just do it separately. From a cost perspective, if it was deemed necessary to do it overall, we'd just have to work that into our budget. So I don't think it's a nice tool to have, but it's not necessarily where we've had, I mean, if there's something that critical that has to go out, we're gonna send it out regardless. And it might not be able to wait for the water bill,
all right.
right? I mean, so obviously we can still do that, and if it's something that's more casual, maybe it's okay to do it staggered quarterly, you know, the 3 months. You know, if Rex has his concert in the park schedule by February or something, that could be sent out over a 3-month period because they don't start till June anyway. So we could still do some of those things potentially. It'll be weird if you get one, John, and then Mike's like, wait, I never got that. Well,
Yeah.
he's got to wait 2 more months to get it, but it's not critical information. It's information that could still be provided to the public.
Although quite frankly, getting Rex's park schedule in February that starts in June,
Well, right.
I mean, it's kind of.
I'm just throwing an example out there, or maybe it's
Well,
the
no,
next.
yeah, I mean,
Okay. Well, what do you guys want to do? Want to refer this on to the village board with a recommendation? Anybody?
If we do move this to the village board, I'd like for there to be some verification that they could tuck in some mailers, if we deem fit. Otherwise, yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement as proposed with the add-on I just mentioned about asking Green Bay about anything we want to insert in the mailers, as far as mailers.
Refer to the village board.
Yes.
second.
Get a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Move on to request to modify the village health plan design and rates. Nelson?
Well, you thought the last thing was confusing. This will completely blow your mind.
Wonderful.
So we currently have 2 different health plans. We have a high deductible plan, and we have what we call the traditional plan, or a PPO plan. So we have a lot of different moving parts. When we established the HSA plan, we were trying to incentivize people to become better consumers and absorb some of the risk that goes with health insurance, if you will. And we set it up such that the employees that are on the high deductible plan would not pay a portion of the premium as their incentive. And then in turn, they could take, instead of paying their employee share contribution, they were encouraged, if you will, to put that same amount of money into their health savings account to kind of build their nest egg to help and bear that risk, if you will. So this is our 3rd year with the HSA. Initial enrollment was very good, but it's kind of tapering in terms of the number of people migrating to the HSA. And so when you look at the HSA from an actuarial standpoint, it should perform worse than it does, because there's about 30 people on the HSA. Right now, it's performing at about 72% of what we're budgeting. But really, if you had a larger sample of people, it would perform probably more like 95% of what is budgeted. It would be higher. But since we have, I guess I will call them healthier people, or people who are better consumers on that side of the plan, it's running very well. On the PPO plan, or the traditional plan, that's running about, right now it's about 96, 97%. With our clinic costs in there, it's probably pushing more like 100% of budget. So at this point, we're collecting enough dollars collectively through the budget to pay for all our healthcare costs, but we're getting to this point where the HSA ends up having to subsidize the PPO plan. And so we need to kind of separate those 2 plans so that the PPO bears its risk, if you will, and we have some other incentive for people to continue to move to that HSA. The Health Advisory Committee has previously said, look, we can't just keep adding to the premium. It doesn't really change behavior. On top of that, the village is paying 88% or 89% of that premium amount. So the employee's not necessarily feeling that change overall. In addition to those, so in addition to that, trying to stagger and change those plans, with our new broker, they have looked at the differences between our tiers in our health plan. So we have a single, an employee plus one, and a family. And right now, the single, if you call that one, because it's one person, the employee plus one should really equal 2 of those premiums because there's 2 people, if you will, and a family should really be at least 3. It really should be above 3 because there's at least 3 people on that plan. Right now, our division is not that. It's 1.4 something, and then a 2.4. So that spread between those plans is not commensurate with where they should be. The single person ends up subsidizing the family significantly. The employee plus one is just a little bit high and also subsidizing the family rate. So the family rate's really what's most out of whack. And then overall, in terms of trying to, so from an actuarial standpoint, I referenced that the HSA should be running higher. If all these people migrated over from the PPO to the HSA, at some point we need to create the HSA overall premium amount needs to be higher because actuarially speaking, it should run at a higher cost than it is. So right now we have huge cost differences between our ratio between the PPO, let's call the PPO $1, and the HSA plan. It's really running at, we were charging say 74 cents on the dollar for that plan. But they're not that different. They're different in the minds of the employee in terms of what they're going through, but in terms of what an actuary would look at between the difference of the plan, it's really $1.96. And well, there's a huge gap between those. So this year with our insurance plan, we're kind of trying to fix all those things and develop more of a 3-year strategy such that at the end of 3 years, our goal would be to get to one plan where all people are on the HSA plan. And we've kind of told employees initially when we created it, it would be a 5 to 7 year transformation, if you will. So this kind of fits in with what that, we'd be at that year 7 when we make this full switch. So if you look at this crazy sheet, for the most part, employees are all in network overall. So our HSA plan is not really changing. That's the bottom sheet down here, the bottom box. Up here, what we're looking to do is, this is the existing plan. So if you see a single is 1,000 for a deductible, it would move to 1,250. And then an employee plus one would move to a total of 2,000 instead of 1,500. And a family is at 2,000 now, it moved to 2,500. But there's actually a big difference here too, is currently we do not have what's called an embedded deductible. So if one family member is ill, they would have to meet, so if I'm employee plus one, and the employee would, or spouse, would have to hit the total of, in this case, let's go to this current year, they'd have to hit the $1,500 in order for it to be met. They don't meet an individual deductible. So we're actually changing that in the next plan to mirror what's more typical in the industry. So one person within the family would have their own deductible at $1,250, but then the family would have to, or the employee plus one would meet 2,000, or the remaining of the family would meet the 2,500. Does that make sense? So even though it's actually higher, in some cases, individuals will do better because they're actually meeting a lower individual deductible than they currently are. With me? The 90-10 coverage would stay the same. The maximum out-of-pocket goes up. So that would be $4,500 for a single instead of currently it's $2,000. That's right. And then the maximum out-of-pocket, excuse me, on the employee plus one would be $6,000, and then family would be $7,500. And again, we'd have that same embedded, so maximum out-of-pocket. So if one person in the family were to be ill, they'd meet a $1,250 individual deductible, and they'd have a maximum out-of-pocket of $4,500. We also currently have separate maximum out-of-pockets for our prescriptions, and those are all rolled up into the same maximum out-of-pockets. Again, that's just more to mirror industry trends overall. Our copays also will go up slightly. So instead of a $10 copay, it would go to $25. Specialists would go up from $10 to $50. Urgent care would be $50, and emergency room would be $250. And the emergency room $250 is waived if the person is admitted into the hospital. Our copays on our prescriptions, the generics stay the same, but the other tiers go up to $30 and $50. In large part, I think we're about 80% or 90% of our prescriptions are generic. So this total plan design change right here has the effect or impact of about $28,000 in terms of how it currently is set up. With me?
Savings.
Savings to the village, or yes, a transfer from what the village is paying to what the employee would
Right.
pay. Correct.
My question is, okay, so you got a $1,250 deductible. I mean, that's, is next year, is that what we're doing, going to the HSA plan then?
Well, not next year. So this would move the the PPO plan. We'll start looking a little bit closer to the HSA plan. So you have a little bit more incentive to say, well, if I'm going to do this, makes more sense to move me. I might as well move over here and save the premium difference overall. And I know, you know, some people are going to say, well, I know I have to get there eventually. I might as well do it now.
Well, okay.
But there's more movement going on. Terry, can you move to the next page?
Yep.
So these are our current premium equivalent rates overall. And this is the changes that would happen. So as I mentioned before, the single person is really subsidizing that family rate. So in trying to change these spreads between these plans, we're trying to go 1, 2, 3, just kind of ease that a little bit. The single premium person is actually going down $25 a month. The employee plus one would go down $2.20 a month. And then it's the family plan that actually would go up $22.80 a month. So that's
Wait
trying
a
to,
minute, I'm not seeing that.
Top,
this is
you're
the
right.
change,
I'm on that,
second page
Yeah.
in your packet.
yep, I've got
Second column to
the
the
right
right.
chart.
Second column on the right.
Yeah. But when I take a look,
So you're
if I stay on the left, I have under single, premium equivalent of 927.
That is what is current. So
Right.
it's 927.
Then
It's actually going to
and then I
switch
go over to the
to
final,
699.
and I see a premium equivalent of 699.
So it's going down,
Right. That's a $127 shift.
but the employee is only paying 11% of that.
Okay, so that's what results in the 25.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's really hard to kind of figure out what the impact is to each individual group, because a single or an employee plus one on the plan, they're actually going to pay less in a premium than they currently are. But it depends on what their claim experiences are from the other page as to where they might end up on that part. This change overall is $11,115 is really coming from that family line. But that's the total net difference in terms of the cost shift from the village. But it's not necessarily that one group. You know, if you're a family coverage, you're paying more in premium, more commensurate with what you should be paying. But again, it depends on what's happening on the other level. You're actually, Terry, if you can scroll back up to the next page, that family member, generally speaking, not all members in that family are having claims. So they may see it better because right now they're meeting a $2,000 deductible, but that individual family member is now going to meet a $1,250 deductible before they hit 90/10 coverage.
I know what you guys go through to make these changes happen and everything, but I know that you're nowhere near where we need to be for the general public.
I agree. This is
Yeah.
the first step. And we had a couple different employee health advisory committee meetings. So the first one left employees not very happy overall. It's a lot of change. It's hard to understand. And part of it's just the plan is so, one, it doesn't mirror what's out there in the industry, but it's also not actuarially sound in terms of where those differences are between an HSA and a PPO or between the different tiers. So one of the things we had asked, we had a different broker up until about 2 years ago. And so part of it was to say, I finally said to this broker, you know what, you've been managing somebody else's plan. What would you do if it was yours? What would you like it to look like? Where would you start? And so this was kind of, there's an earlier, actually 2 earlier versions of this in terms of how she changed it. We said, okay, this option 2 was going to be a little bit easier to sell to employees because it maintained a 90% coverage level. Then we went to the employees with it. Our maximum out-of-pockets were much higher, and that was really a sensitive spot. People are not really hitting those, but when you see it, it has a shock value, if you will, to it. So that's how we, in talking with them, reduced those down. Interestingly enough, you know, we had people that missed the first meeting came to the second meeting, and you end up with people that are in the first meeting trying to explain it and tell the other one, this is what we have to do because we have to make this migration. And you still have some employees who were here when there was no employee contribution at all to health insurance. And I don't know if there was like $100 deductible or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
you know, that's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. So I think that's the overall struggle, is just the way things used to be. And certainly when we have new employees coming, they are less likely to grumble because they've come from somewhere else and have seen different plans. They may have already had an HSA, that type of thing. One thing I didn't add in here that we talked about too is that as of the first of the year, we'd also like to require all new employees to go into the HSA plan as well. So I think it's very clear to employees now that we have to start making that transition and move on. Next year, what I would probably anticipate is hopefully we'll see some additional migration into the HSA, but the HSA plan can't continue to provide zero employee contribution, and we need to start working that in there. We may have to end up with a premium forgiveness or something like we've done in the past, but we need to have that built in there for that eventual larger migration that's going to happen, and our costs are going to go up. So we don't want to just switch everybody over there and not have any premium contribution on top of that. Because really with the change in these plans, remember how I said the current plan is worth like 90, in actuarial sense, about 96 to the $1 on the PPO. With these plan changes, now it's more like $1 to 98 cents. So they're much closer in value to each other. Purely from an actuarial standpoint, I realize that's not how the employee sees it.
Have you laid out with the broker a 3-year plan? And I guess what I'm getting to is that, and I think you're right, as far as the HSA, eventually you have to have a premium contribution. Otherwise, in a short amount of time, you're going to have free insurance, which is where you were back
10, 12 years ago.
you know, and then you're going to be fighting the battle again. So I guess have you laid out with the broker, and I'll say a 3-year plan, as to this is where we want to be, and these are the steps we're going to take to get there. I mean, it's, as opposed to looking at it, you know, each year and, well, let's maybe try to move here. Lay out the plan now.
Well, next year's move will be that contribution. We have not decided what that amount would be. I think we want to see how much migration occurs and what's happening to the plan, but we do feel by the 3rd year, everybody's going to be on that same plan. So there may be a second move in terms of premium contribution probably in year 3.
Well, you maybe can't lay out a dollar amount, but I would think you could lay out a percentage amount.
We could.
So, I mean, so you've got a plan to get there. Because otherwise, my concern is if you do it just on a year-by-year basis, you may not get there, or it's gonna be just a huge shock when you get there.
Every time we get to this part of the year when we're looking at these rates and everything, I have to bite my tongue.
I don't, and I've told that to our health advisory meeting. I mean, if you really look at the makeup of our board overall, village board, by large numbers, you're all self-employed for the most part. So we try to explain to them that, look, what every resident sees out on the street is not what you see, and you just can't take that attitude. But it's a matter of perspective. They are supportive of this particular plan. Maybe to address John's point in turn to make that 3-year plan, I think in our heads we kind of know where that is in terms of growing that premium change, but we're still a really small plan in terms of we only have we have 110, 107 people on our plan, so we can have kind of a catastrophic incident that's going to completely change the best laid plans, if you will. So we can say, well, this is what we want to do, but we have, right now we have 2 high-cost claimants, but they're not anywhere near the previous high-cost claimant that changed our stop-loss carrier type thing. So that with our stop-loss that happened 2 years ago, we went up 55% in our stop-loss rate. So it wouldn't have mattered what we planned for. It was all out the window when you see that kind of change in a cost.
Well, I'm going to give you a little perspective here, just so that you can, they can relate a little bit, because I'm going through it right now. I've got half a dozen employees. I've got one employee myself that hit a deductible, maybe that's paid anything in. I've got a $6,000 deductible single. I got a 22% increase across the board, and they increased it that the stop loss is at 70%, not 90. You know, in network besides that. And, you know, so I mean, it's unbelievable. We've got, you know, just a small amount of claims and the amount that I'm paying in insurance a year. And my employees pay 25% of the single premium, and if they want family, they pay the difference. So that's why it's so hard, you know, when we work as hard as we do, we all do. And I see this, it's like, I would love to be able to get on this plan. I mean, my single rate for me is over $900 for just me, not $600 or $700. I don't know. I mean, to not pay anything in premium, to save $76 a month, you're farther off for $100 more deductible that you don't know if you're going to use it or not to go on to the HSA no matter what for an employee here, for sure.
And we've done that analysis. 2 employees, I mean, what is it, 90-some% of our employees would be financially better off in the HSA, but it's hard to in their heads, it's about bearing that risk in that transition, and how do we move them on. Like right now, even in terms of this plan, their flex doesn't even cover what their maximum out of pockets will be. So they lose out on that pre-tax savings. That makes the HSA even make more sense. At least you're saving those dollars, you don't lose them, and you have greater pre-tax benefits.
But you're saving it, and if something happens, then you pay it.
Right.
You can pocket it and invest it if you want. I don't care what you do with it. You're going to make money at that anyway. So it's like, it's a no-brainer. I know what you guys are up against. I just have to say that so that maybe the word gets out there that, you know, what we're paying out in the real.
The other world, the private sector world.
Yes,
they're all
private
both
sector.
real worlds.
Sorry, but that's.
I understand.
The last number that I saw on a national basis, the average contribution is 27%. So, I mean, we're way below that. Now, that's a national average.
a scan of all metro area municipalities. We're in line with them
Well, yeah.
overall.
Yeah,
I just want to,
But
I don't want
what you're doing, and I'm not being critical by saying this, you're comparing government to government to government. Whereas in non-government, and that's really the basis for the 27%, because government would skew it down. It's just, it's apples and oranges.
it is. And from the employee's perspective, the salary, the other things are some of those trade-offs too. And I'm not saying they don't have good jobs and they're not well paid for what they do, but that would be their argument in terms of
Oh, sure.
private sector bonuses and all that kind of thing. It's,
Well, we better move on this, or somebody might make a, otherwise I might change my mind here pretty soon, so.
we still have to make the changes somewhat gradually, otherwise we'll shock the system. And I, you know, we did present a more extreme option, like I had said. This is kind of the compromise we came to without value changing a whole lot in terms of what the impact to the village is. Overall as well, in terms of when we budget, so overall, we're taking in more money because we've increased the HS. Terry, if you can go to the second page. We've increased the overall premiums, including on the HSA, because actuarially we want that to be a little bit different. So when I had said before, we're at about 72 cents or 74 cents on that dollar. This moves the HSA plan up to about 85 cents on that dollar. And it really needs to be more like 96, 98. But since that's all paid by the village, we're actually taking in more money overall between the two plans than we need to. And what we'll be doing as part of the budget process is a premium forgiveness on the HSA plan to active employees, which really means the village would end up with a premium forgiveness for 4 months. Is it your head? Not your head. Does that make sense?
Not that I agree with it, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yes, it's to get us to where we actually are, but we're inflating the HSA higher than what the true practical application of what that is. And then next year, that's why we'll hopefully see some migration, increase the employee contribution in terms of trying to better bear that result. But overall, like that's saying we're taking in that 2.1 million. We really need to be around 1.9 million or somewhere in there. 2 million.
Are we restricted by statute as to how much we can hold in reserve? And I guess what I'm getting at is I take a look at this premium forgiveness, I understand what you're trying to do, but on the other hand, the village as the employer is assuming all the risk. And all you need is $1 million baby. And from experience, I know they exist. And you're going to blow through your reserves, and you're going to see your stop loss go through the roof. So, from a risk factor that you're taking on all the risk, should we be, in effect, reimbursing
Well, in this
premium?
case, we're reimbursing ourselves, so we're not overfunding our reserve. Currently, our reserve is how much? 6 months? 4 months? Currently at 3 to 4 months. The recommendation is usually 2 to 3 to 6.
But is there a statutory limit on what we can have in reserve?
No, I think it's just more the practical purpose that if we stick it in there, we can't use it for any other purpose, and then it doesn't allow us to use it for paving a road or
Well, yeah,
paying
but-
out retirements or other things like that. Our stop loss is at 75,000, so while I totally agree that the $1 million baby, it has happened here,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
happened multiple times, we do have that stop loss, but that's where the last time it happened, our contract had no new lasers, but they could increase our stop loss by 55% at renewal, and that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
At the end, in terms of what was happening between our two plans, we really didn't dip into reserves I don't even know if we dipped in at all or very, very slightly.
But if we retain those excess premiums, put them into our reserve, could we then raise our stop loss, which would lower our cost on stop loss?
You could, but it would be at the expense of other parts of our budget.
But if we're billing for health insurance, we're billing for health insurance, I guess.
Right, but what he's saying is keep building up that
I know, I
reserve.
know.
Well, if we
Yeah.
keep building up the reserves, we don't have money on the other side to pay for the other things, the other 75% of the things we're doing in our budget. So you lose that ability to use those funds. Once it's in that health fund, you can't transfer it out.
Yeah.
2 years later, you're there.
Fine.
That is
So-
fine, except for the overall budget.
Right.
You would then have to increase your overall budget. The village would have to increase its budget by $182,000, which is significant in our overall budget, in order to not do a premium forgiveness on this plan currently.
So it costs us money to build our reserve? Is that what you're saying?
Because
It would, because under what's out there now, we're over collecting, if you will. We really need about like 1.9 to $2 million to cover our health insurance claims. And so in order to fix the spread between the plans, you adjust less on the PPO, but what really has to go up is that HSA, because that one's artificially low. That's the one that's at the 74 cents on the dollar. Really needs to be 96 cents on the dollar. So the HSA has to go up. If the HSA goes up to the 96 cents on the dollar, the HSA dollars would be subsidizing the PPO side, because the PPO is right at budget, if you will. And we're trying to avoid the HSA subsidizing the PPO, because otherwise the PPO stays the same year after year and you have no movement sending it back.
But why does building up our reserves, in effect self-insuring ourselves, cost us money?
We are self-funded, so any excess we have each year does go add into the reserves.
Right.
And more often than not, we add in, ever so slightly, into those reserves.
Right.
And so if we were to, in this case, what I'm saying is we're overfunding that by 182,000 overall. It costs us, this over here is an additional $182,000 of cost to the village. So we have to budget for that.
Those dollars are all charged back to each of the departments based on usage. So ultimately, it's tax levy that's can help funding this, and there's only so much there. So if we wanted to add more and build up reserves, it's at the cost of what we can use for the general fund and other operations. It's just
I
we only have-
understand, yeah, I understand if you're increasing the premium because we're paying 90% of the premium, that increases our budget. But how does retaining,
Because we're spending it right now, we're not charging the village.
we're spending it by giving the forgiveness, so we're using those dollars to pay part of our,
Roads, whatever.
no, not roads, because you got to use it for health. You're using it to pay a month's premium, which you don't budget for.
No, right now we budget for all 12 months of it is in there. We're just planning on, in years when it's possible, we've done a premium forgiveness so that we're able to budget at a more consistent level overall. We're trying to avoid the ups and the downs overall, and we're trying to budget consistently. So when we do a premium forgiveness, the biggest benefactor of that premium forgiveness is the village, because it's paying the greatest majority of it.
You're forgiving both sides.
The process is we actually, in the payroll system, put $0 in the premium. So when payroll runs, nothing is expensed out or sent over to the health fund. That's how it's forgiven. Because if I process it for payroll, once it's processed, you can't send it back. So that's how that process works.
Okay, on the forgiveness, again, because we're absorbing all the risk, do we have to forgive both sides of the equation? Could-
Yes,
Why?
what the consultants say, that you have to,
Well,
you can do it
yeah,
for
no,
active
yeah, I know what the
employees
consultant
versus
says,
retirees, but if you forgive it,
Well,
you have
that's
to
also
forgive
what
it.
the auditors have told us. That we're following the process ultimately that the auditors have told us. In fact, they're the ones that a couple of years ago, or that was when we were dealing with budget time, they said, well, that would be an option for you to do. Because we had asked, can we use these dollars? And they said, no, once they're in the fund, they have to be used for health. I mean, we could transfer dental dollars to health and health dollars to dental, but you can't. They said the only way that you would avoid that is they explained the whole forgiveness process to us, that it would be wise to budget for the full year, because then you don't have to add, and then you would
Right.
do, if you're having a good year, you would forgive the premiums, and that process would be all premiums are forgiven. You can't pick and choose one side or the other. It has to be the whole, there's no premium deducted from payroll at all, employer or employee side.
So basically what it
wait,
amounts to is that we get,
Can you get that confirmed again?
Sure.
We
Because
do it every year.
I
mean, because we
I don't
have this issue
understand the
called-
logic.
well, you can't
It's the
charge one,
rules.
not the other.
Well, that's true.
Because the employee is paying a percentage of the premium. If there is no premium, there's no percentage for them to pay.
I'll make the motion to approve the request to modify the village health plan design and rates as discussed.
Do a second?
I'll second, but I do have a question. Allison, you mentioned before that, because we're going to approve this as proposed, but you said there was something that wasn't in here? Do you need- Do we need to add that in?
Also add that all new employees start beginning January 1st, 2019 would only have the option to go into the HSA plan. Thank you for reminding me.
Is that okay?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
Just one comment, Allison. In the stuff that I've been reading, the terminology family plan is no longer used. It's employee plus two or more. Take a look at it. Because family is such a broad, loosey-goosey definition today.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes reluctantly for me. Yeah. We'll go on to 7C, request to review naming rights agreement at the baseball stadium. Allison?
This is John's request. We don't have that. Our contract with Big Top provides them full naming rights capabilities in terms of what was negotiated with them. We do not have access to their naming rights. It's a proprietary item, so we're not a party to that agreement.
So there's no restriction on what they do in terms of naming rights?
There are restrictions in terms of, like, they can't use, like, adult entertainment in there. I think there's two other alcohol-related items may have some restrictions. There's some approvals in terms of if they came out with something outlandish where the village would say, yeah, we're not calling it whatever.
Is there any restriction, now we can use the ballpark 10 times a year.
Correct.
Because of the naming rights, is there any restriction on what we could put in there? And I guess what I'm getting at is if Kate were to get a concert and say another financial institution were want to co-sponsor or underwrite it, would that be a problem because it's a financial institution that bought the naming rights?
Not that I'm aware in terms of our events. You know, we have expenses that we need to cover when the event happens. It's the other institution may not want to say, you know, PCM Credit Union presents, whatever band at Capital Credit Union Park. I mean, that's the name of the stadium, so there may be some inherent conflicts in terms of where somebody else gets the billing. I would assume there are some restrictions between Capital Credit Union and what happens with what Big Top does, but there's nothing between Big Top and us that restricts how that works. So, I mean, I think when we got to a specific event, we'd have to discuss how that is or may influence how something gets branded out there. But
Is there, and I'm going to try to keep this narrow, but are there any, do we share in any other advertising revenues that go into the stadium?
no. That's part of their revenues in order to pay the lease revenues to the.
Oh, yeah, that part I understand.
Right.
But what I'm trying to figure out is our recovery costs in terms of the cost of the stadium.
Isn't it all through TIF, isn't it?
Well,
No,
a
that
good
doesn't
portion is their lease payments.
Right.
And then, yes,
The
Then it's TIF.
TIF revenue that's generated in this districts goes to pay for that stadium. Any additional construction that's happened in this area, that whatever percentage didn't get paid to that project, there's a lot of projects that are having construction here that don't get any TIF incentive that go to help pay that debt for that stadium. I said that right?
correct, you're right.
So all these apartments that you're seeing going around here, that's not 100% paid on TIF. So all that increment is going to pay for that stadium. Not all of it, but I mean a good share of it anyways.
Sure, about the concept of what the baseball stadium does to the district and how it spurs additional growth on top of it because of wanting to be in proximity to it. We will see additional growth as a result of it.
Well, that's speculative.
You can say that, yes.
Well, there are studies all over the map in terms of what sports venues, bring into communities. I think it's pretty solid, what happens here in Green Bay when you get a ball game. But when you start getting to other locales, those numbers just fall apart.
But it's more than just a sports venue. I wouldn't narrow it down to just a baseball stadium. They're required to do at least 90 events a year. Baseball is 36 days a year. Soccer is another 10. This is about bringing community events to our area. It's about addressing what the community desires, whether it's seniors or millennials, are all about those experiences and the events behind it. It's really about that. It's not about playing baseball. Baseball is awesome 36 times, but it's only 36 times. It's a small fraction of what the programming and the events and the things that need to happen here.
Could I get a copy of the agreement?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Okay, wonderful. Items for next agenda? Anybody have anything? We're coming into budget time, so it's going to get busy, I'm sure. Or is that
Well,
next
we
time?
have the joint village board finance personnel budget meeting is on Tuesday, November 13th. So I believe that will be our next meeting. So I think we've had at times in the past, if there was something specific to finance personnel, we tackled that item first. So
Okay,
And right now, because Christmas falls on a Tuesday, which would be the fourth Tuesday of the month, it would be village board. I think we are looking at potentially moving up village board to the 11th. We're not sure we would really have anything for finance at that point, so we may do like a brief meeting before the village board meeting or something like that, but
okay,
we have a list of projected items in terms of our agendas, what approvals we need, and right now those are a little thin as we're all just crushing out what we need to crush out at this point and focused on budget.
okay. Anybody has anything? Just get back to Allison or Greg or Terry or myself, and we'll get it on there for you. Need a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Motion and second. Thank you, and thank you for readjusting your schedules.